we will get started. Our first question says, what do you believe is the most important aspect of building a strong, sustainable economy in West Virginia?
Hello? Oh, now it stopped working.
It's all right.
Do you want me to just project? I've done a lot of community theater. I could just
Yeah.
speak to the back of the room.
Thank you. I think one of the most important things we need to think about are the kind of communities where people want to work and live. When people choose where they're going to move, where they're going to start their business, if they're going to stay here when they graduate from college, if they're going to start their business here that they are interested in pursuing, they look at the communities that they're going to live in. They look at the schools. They look at the neighborhoods. They look at local businesses. They look at how inclusive, how diverse, how supportive local government is. Those are the things that attract people to work and live and build an economy in an area. And that's something that we can focus a lot more on, is building up our communities and not necessarily looking to outside corporations and industries to come in and rescue us, because that's always the mistake in West Virginia. We look for somebody to come in, we give them tax breaks to come and rescue us, and instead we get exploited. So I think building up our communities and making them attractive places to live and work is one of the first things we could do.
I agree with that. And also just add to that, I think also working in jobs to break stigma. You know, working in the service industry, I worked in the service industry for a decade, and I made a really good living, but it is not seen as a job that is respectable. Working, for a nonprofit, we need to raise the minimum wage. We need to also look out for affordable housing. And that's what's going to also keep people here and keep people wanting to be here in Huntington or anywhere in the state of West Virginia. And also looking out for our vulnerable populations and our minority groups. We need to have more diverse and more economic places that have fairness in jobs and in housing.
All right, I'm going to get a little more granular. I agree, but I'm going to even take it to the further individual level. I think to build a really good economy in West Virginia, we need to, again, have more open markets and allow our people to work here in West Virginia. And part of in doing that is understanding we do need traits such as respect and acceptance and inclusion. So I guess that being said, on a very low level, a lot of people that are not in the workforce who live in poverty, they struggle with mental illness, and they have a really hard time finding the confidence to even go into the workforce. So I think even understanding how we can meet people where they are on an individual level and bring them the resources they need so that they can work in an industry that meets them where they are. And
Great, thank you. The second question, do you believe the government should encourage greater adoption of can you all hear me? Of renewable energy sources in light of the increase in flooding this past year due to climate change? And if so, what will you do?
what was the first part of that question?
Do you believe the government should encourage greater adoption of renewable energy sources in light of the flooding this past year? And if so, what would you do?
I think we should adopt more renewable energy and natural energy in West Virginia, especially since we're the 5th largest producer of natural gas marketing in the world, which is pretty impressive, and we only use 3% of it in our own sector. So what would I do is, I actually went to the manufacturers legislative dinner last night, and I got to meet with a lot of these industries that are in energy. And it was actually quite interesting to find that a lot of them are local and they provide a lot of jobs. So what I would do would really depend on the collaboration that occurs. I'd really like to understand why it is we are so attached to coal when it's an it's a kind of an oppressed industry on our people, and I think our attachment to coal is something that's kind of preventing us moving forward, but we still need to respect that cultural aspect. So how do we do that?
I think that we need to work on our infrastructure, especially when it comes to like flooding and things that we've recently just had, especially over in the Inslow Boulevard area. My mom lives over there. So we need to work on our infrastructure and kind of like foreseeing what it possibly could happen with flooding and different things that happen. And these are things that I'm still learning about. I'll be open and honest about that, as transparency is key. You know, and as far as what I'll do about it, first we have to get elected. So, you know, one, just sitting here, you can see that I care about our environment and where we live. So we can't do anything until we are there, but obviously advocate for what is right for our fellow West Virginians.
Absolutely. I think we need to encourage greater adoption of renewable energy sources. I think that that is the future. That is, we talk about, you know, a lot of times we talk about the existential threat we face when it comes to climate change. I think connecting it to things like local flooding is exactly what we need to do. When I think about what I would do when I'm elected, well, I will still be in the minority, I expect. So I can talk about the way I'd vote or introducing legislation to increase, you know, electric school buses. That's great. We need more of that. Solar panels, I'm on my roof, let's put them everywhere. Those are great, but it's the way we talk about it. We have to connect these things to real life things that are impacting people right now. It's not enough to talk about your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. People do care about that, but it doesn't motivate them to get up and vote and speak out. We need to talk about things like the flooding. That happened because of climate change. Real life things connected to these bigger ideas is how we get support and how we move legislation forward.
Thank you. Next question. This year, Governor Justice signed a bill. Is this working? This year, Governor Justice signed a bill that lifted the ban on the construction of nuclear energy plants in West Virginia. Do you support this move? And in your view, what is the outlook of modular nuclear in West Virginia now that the ban has been lifted?
I know this is probably a departure from my party line, but I don't personally think that nuclear energy is the way forward, and I especially very trepidatious about that in the state of West Virginia. We have a long history of, especially extraction industries, coming in and taking advantage of our people, of our workers. Our land is damaged, our people are harmed, and they take the profits and they leave. And we've seen that happen over and over again. And I don't know right now with our current executive administration, with our current legislature, why we would expect them to protect our land, our resources, our laborers, our families, our streams. Why would we expect them to protect them any better than they have in the past? So to put something like nuclear energy in the state of West Virginia, first of all, I think it was more symbolic. I don't think there are any concrete plans. And secondly, good, because I don't trust the people in power to do that in a responsible way. So I would not support nuclear energy as our way forward at this time.
I definitely think education on this topic is huge. As somebody who is still learning about it, having conversations with delegates, education, safety of our community, also location. Typically when factories or different places are put, they are put around where affordable housing is, you know what I mean? And we need to watch out for everyone here in West Virginia and not just say, oh, this is a cheaper place to put things and this is where we should put it. So we need to watch out for all aspects of our community because we are a community as a whole.
So I honestly do not know what this ban would mean for West Virginia. I actually have counter questions, so I wouldn't be able to answer it until I understood how much GDP does this create for West Virginia, how many jobs does this create, who is it going to be benefiting, where are the locations at. As Ali said, they do put these in areas that more impoverished people live in, and these are often people that don't vote and don't often get to be integrated in our
next question. The Ohio River is one of the most polluted rivers in the United States. What plans, if any, do you have for making it less polluted?
Great question. I've been reading all day about how to clean air and clean water without using heavy government regulation, and I'm stumped at finding good resources on that. So I am going to pass the mic because I would also love to know better ways of cleaning our water. I would love if there were ways to clean our water sources that were more mechanical, and something that would be able, again, to create jobs and not use heavy regulations to, in order to create that cleaner water.
That's okay. I think, one aspect is also, again, education. What is polluting our river, and learning more about that and how that we can either combat it, fix it, and help in those ways. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. It's a great question, and something that, like, I haven't, other than an obvious of going down and like cleaning, like picking up trash and different things like that. And I've been a part of several groups along Guyandotte and Althauser area of like cleaning up, but as far as like water, period, you know what I mean? So me finding out what is causing it and helping to fix it.
I once in college had the opportunity to ride down the entire Ohio River on a side-wheel paddle boat, studying actually antibiotic resistance in the water, but also along with scientists who were studying the pollution of the water. So that was a wonderful experience that I think helped a lot, because the thing I learned is that we do have to use government regulation to hold people accountable. I mean, that's my opinion, that when it comes to the polluters, they're varied and they're all up and down the river, and they all need to be held to the standard of what are you putting into the water. You're held accountable for cleaning it, for removing it. We don't need to come up with the science exists. We have people who can tell us how to do that. We have to stop people from polluting it freely, paying meager fines and moving on. We have to hold them accountable for that, and make it really count money-wise to them. That's the way that we stop it, and then we trust the scientists to tell us how to make them pay for cleaning it up.
Thank you. Our next question has a bit of a preface, so I will read that preface before launching into the question. With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, billions of dollars will be allocated to help communities who have suffered the most from living and working in proximity to fossil fuel industries. For too long, polluted air and water have compromised the welfare of our citizens and placed West Virginia in the bottom rankings for health in our nation. What can West Virginia do to increase communication with communities, to know where increased services and cleanups are needed, and when relocations are at issue?
I think part of that calls back to helping people understand the problem. There's always, I think people get very defensive, especially when they have a long family tradition of working in like the mining industry. And I grew up in West Virginia, I understand that, but I think it's helping people understand that this has impacted your community and this isn't your fault. You were part of the industry that came and gave you jobs and fed your children. Of course you participated in it, but now we need to change course. Because this has damaged the environment, it's damaged your community, and getting people to understand those effects and connecting cancer rates with those chemicals, connecting what we're finding in streams, connecting acid mine drainage with the effects on local crops and vegetation. We have to make those connections for communities so that they see that, and then we have to spend the time and energy and money to go directly to those communities, go to the haulers, and make sure people are getting access to the services they need.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. Would you like the preface or just the question?
Just the question.
What can West Virginia do to increase communication with communities to know where increased services and cleanups are needed and when relocations are at issue.
Okay, so I kind of think Huntington has a really awesome 311 app. And you know, you can put in different locations of different things that are happening throughout the city. I think, you know, putting something as far as communication wise, that people can communicate throughout the state. You know what I mean? If there are different cleanups going on, if there are different things throughout different communities that are going on, that people can pitch in and help clean up and do the things that are necessary for our neighborhoods and for our fellow West Virginians.
I love that 311 app. I would say have greater representation. My experience in campaigning so far is we waste a lot of money in marketing in our state, and in campaigning alone, I feel like there's a lot of money that goes into marketing, and there's still people in these small towns that do not have access to the communication or resources. I think it would be absolutely a pivotal thing, and West Virginia is a great place to start this practice, perhaps for the whole country. If we could have somehow a representative in every precinct, and so not just to share, things going on within government that would give resources to these families and individuals, but I think having a representative in every precinct would really help spreading the word and obtaining knowledge across the board of political matters that really affect us in our day-to-day.
Thank you. Our next question. Why can't industries be held more accountable? We know that stricter regulations and monitoring of West Virginia's fossil fuel industries are needed. Would you support funding to enforce current regulations by increasing West Virginia EPA inspectors?
I am not for increasing regulations within the EPA. I'm more interested in understanding, I do think that education mentioned is important. So understanding, going to these manufacturers and understanding again what their pain point is. I understand the person who asked this question sees how these big businesses take advantage of the employees and the regions that they've planted themselves, and I understand that, but I'm not, I don't think more regulation is necessarily what will solve that issue. I actually think more in maybe the community members of the organization unionizing in a way to really hold their employers accountable.
So I think accountability, transparency, and representation are very key. And having more people who can do inspections and make sure that there is safety is huge. We've seen a lot of disasters happen in different locations because of safety checks. So yes, I do support having more EPA inspections, but also unionizing and making sure that everybody is taken care of, that everybody is safe, and that everybody is educated at what's going on.
The reason that we have trouble holding these industries accountable is because they're paying to ensure they're never held accountable. I mean, at the end of the day, we do need more inspections, we do need more regulations, but these industries have the money and lobbying power to ensure that the legislature won't ever do that to them. So the number one thing we can do is elect people who don't answer to fossil fuel industries, who answer to people. So I think that's the biggest change that we need to see, because as long as there is so much money being poured into ensuring that those elected will never rule or never pass any laws that will negatively impact corporations, but will only negatively impact people and communities and our environment, then we're always going to lose that battle. So I absolutely am for more inspections and more regulation, but the only way we're going to do that is if we have people in elected positions who will answer to us and not to the corporations.
Our next question has an even longer preface, and so I'm going to use the microphone. According to minesafetywestvirginia.gov, there are thousands of West Virginia abandoned coal mines. One of those mines was made into a lavender and bee farm known as Appalachian Botanical Company, which sells lavender products. While using the abandoned coal mine, this company also hires the people who typically cannot find jobs. Those formerly incarcerated or in recovery, and former coal miners who were laid off. However, that is only one example. Will you encourage job creation and the revitalization of abandoned coal mines to not only combat climate change, but at a high unemployment rate? If so, how would you suggest accomplishing this?
Thank you. I think that is exactly the way forward. I think the beauty of something like that, which I'm really excited to now know about, is that it not only fixes all of those problems that you want to address, it provides people with opportunities with employment, especially people who have trouble, I can vouch for that, people in recovery, people who have a record of having committed a felony have incredible difficulty finding employment. So it fixes those problems, but it's uniquely West Virginia. And that is our way forward, is celebrating what makes us who we are. We have this was our history. Coal mining was a part of our history, and we acknowledge that. But now we're moving forward. I think part of how we do that, not just encouraging these ideas, celebrating these entrepreneurs and business owners who want to open these sorts of places that celebrate our heritage, but we also have to make sure that we're incentivizing that with tax incentives, with tax breaks, make sure that those small businesses and local entrepreneurs have the same opportunities that we have traditionally given outside corporations.
I wish I could just say what she said.
Hello, okay. I wish I could just say what she said, because I agree with everything that you said. Also, that's really awesome. I've never heard of that. It's awesome to hear what is happening within your state and learning new things every day. How I would do it, no idea. I mean, I think it's an awesome idea. I've never heard of it, but I would definitely support it and encourage it. I think that, also working at Harmony House and seeing individuals that want to have jobs, or people that in recovery, or anybody should have the opportunity to have a job, but also fixing people being able to have a driver's license to get that job, or healthcare, affordable healthcare within small businesses. For the last decade, I haven't had insurance, working for a local business, so making sure that we have affordable healthcare, and supporting people who are trying to have local small businesses would be key.
I am quite fond of the idea of rehabilitating these abandoned coal mines. Where I'm from is Fayette County, that's where I was born and raised, and we use our coal mines as tourist attractions. I know out Wayne also, they have a miners program there for rehabilitation where they started doing mushrooms and herbals. As far as the mines, one option, I do want to remind everybody that when we do take away coal jobs from these families, that there's just under 12,000 people that still work in the coal industry in West Virginia, and when we take those jobs away from them, we're taking them away from their whole family and probably generations to come. So we're putting generations upon generations into poverty, because when we take these jobs away from our miners, we don't really have the best rehabilitation practices for them, and they take significant pay cuts. That being said, part of rehabilitating these mines is you could use the miners to kind of recreate the idea of their own vision, what they would see there, but I think that would also come with deciding their pay.
Our next question dovetails beautifully with the idea of vision. The question says, do you think that West Virginia needs to create a vision plan to help us transition to a clean energy future that would accomplish IPCC goals by cutting greenhouse gas emissions by almost half during this decade and zero emissions by 2050?
Absolutely. As a visual artist, I think being able to create something for everyone to visualize and contribute to feel a part of is not only a great aspect to unify us as a community, but it will help us to understand the needs of one another and how, in the big picture, all of our small visions still play a part. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. As somebody who's been involved in creating a 501c3, mission, vision, and values is huge. It would be awesome for our state to have the same, and for everybody to be on the same page. And again, as a Democrat in a minority area, it's finding priorities that unite us and finding the middle of the road, which is what we have to do. Also, unity, growth, and sustainability. It's finding people who are passionate, who will speak for us, and exactly what Sydney said, people who are for the people.
I think that's exactly what we need to do moving forward, because creating a vision panel like that would allow us the opportunity to bring everybody who's impacted to the table, make sure that everybody is represented, and that speaks to exactly who is most nervous about this and who we don't want to forget, which are people who have worked and created a living in the coal mining industry. And I think the messaging isn't, we're not taking jobs. Government has the power to make sure you get better ones, and that's green energy is the way forward for that. We have people who've powered this nation with their hands, with their blood, sweat, and tears, and their lungs for generations. We can power this nation again. We can start with the state, maybe, but we can do that again with alternative energy sources. There's no reason that we have to give up on that goal, and we don't have to give up on those good paying jobs. We can pay everybody and provide them with healthcare benefits. We have the capacity to do that if the government has the will to serve the people.
Third question with a long preface. A new West Virginia report showing the presence of PFAS has been made available to the public. PFAS, commonly known as forever chemicals, are man-made toxic compounds that do not break down in the environment. This report comes on the heels of a U.S. EPA issuing new drinking water health advisories for 4 PFAS, specifying the levels toxic to public health. Clusters of high PFAS levels were found along the Ohio River and in the Eastern Panhandle. Samples at 37 public water system sources greatly exceeded the EPA's health advisories for 2 types of PFAS, PFOA and PFOS. What do you believe should be done to protect drinking water for West Virginians?
Thank you. Well, I think this is the position in me. I think the first thing we have to do is stop the bleeding. We have a legislature that is willing to continue to loosen regulations on water quality standards. They're continuing to allow higher and higher levels of cancer-causing chemicals in our drinking water and seeping into our groundwater. So I think one of the first things we need to do is stop that. We know what levels are dangerous. We know what scientists tell us, and we know that it's all around us. Like we've heard, it's in the Ohio River banks. It's in our drinking water. It makes me question the water I'm drinking right now next to me. We need to stop loosening regulations on what we allow in our water. And then again, we have to start holding the people who are putting that into our water accountable and making sure, I was just reading an article that we have ways of starting to address this and breaking down those chemicals. That was an article from like last month. But until we have the money and the will to do it, that won't move forward.
And also to add to that, electing people who care, and who are going to put it in layman's terms, listen to the experts. As somebody who honestly is learning about all of the topics and all of these things that come with being in the legislature, listening, knowing who to listen to, knowing who to go to for guidance, knowing that you will have a person who will listen and not just do what an entire party says, and advocating for a better West Virginia.
So West Virginia, no surprise, has some of the worst drinking water in the country. These acronyms I've never heard of until I got here today. I've looked them up briefly, and they sound like horrible poisons. Personally, I'm not even somebody that supports plastics. I'm not a fan of things that don't biodegrade. That being said, again, I find that oftentimes our regulations do discourage growth for the working class and people that live in poverty. I'm not against regulation, but I would need to understand more around these topics and how they would be regulated. That being said, I'm really curious if there's any kind of natural source that can help clean our waters. For example, there's certain fungi that we found can actually recycle plastics now. So I wonder if there's any kind of fungi we can put in our water streams that will kind of eat that pollution away.
Before I go on with the next question, on the table in the back are cards and pens, and Morgan to your right has cards. If any of you who've come in later would like to ask a question of our candidates, please fill out a card and get it to Morgan. Thank you. Next question. What is your vision for the future of West Virginia's environment and energy economy?
I would really love if we used more of our natural gas. It's kind of a shame that we have such a huge production here and we use so little of it. Again, I'm not quite understanding why the 88% of fossil fuels is so heavily desired. I am a miner's daughter, and I used to protest against mountaintop removal actually until I realized the history of it. So there's an aspect of history that tends to make you appreciate the presence. Moving forward, my vision is if we could have more solar energy, take advantage of the natural gas we have, which actually is a big constituent statement that I've been getting door knocking, is why don't we use our own natural gas? So coming straight from the constituents, that's really important to them. I would love if we had more farms and outdoor education classes and things to build up our environment in a way that's not towards
Education, I think more technical trade schools that would teach the next generation about renewable energy and how, what we can do for our future, whether it be installing solar panels, wind panels, using the Ohio River, but starting from the next generation and starting that with education. As a daughter of a retired educator, education is huge. I have friends that work at Solar Hauler and seeing, how that is helping out, and even with nonprofits, with legislation passing and it being affordable for more places to go solar, looking into the future, I think also just investing in our people and the people who are going to represent us is going to impact us for generations.
I agree. I do think that, as Allie said, education is a huge piece of it to help people understand what we're trying to do and why this could be so beneficial for the state. That helps ensure that people are elected who will make that happen. I think that the big thing is, first of all, we have electric school buses in the state. That's huge. And the jobs that are created when we start building the batteries and the buses in the state, that's huge. And let's expand on that. Also, we need the infrastructure for that. There's another opportunity for jobs in the state of West Virginia. I think it's really exciting. I work at Cabell, and they have reserved spaces at Cabell to plug in your electric car. That's fantastic. We have 2 so far. So hopefully we'll never have more than 2 doctors driving electric cars. But we need more of that, and those are job opportunities. Same with solar. I have solar panels on my roof. These are opportunities to create jobs, and that can sustain our economy and build our economy and save us money moving forward.
Next question. What industries or sectors are best positioned to compensate for the declining fossil fuel industry and create jobs in both rural and more urban areas of West Virginia?
I feel a little like a broken record saying answering this on the heels of what I just said, but I think that these alternative energy sources, these renewable energy sources, are exactly the industries we need to be turning to. That is the direction that the whole country is going to be going. It's the direction that we're going to have to go globally. That's the nature of renewable and non-renewable energy sources. And so I think West Virginia leading the way in those sorts of green jobs are exactly the kind of jobs that will speak to people who are trying to transition, who need workforce training, who need education, to go from these energies of the past that are waning and have made us unhealthier and have damaged our environment to these energies of the future that can fix those problems. And again, are gonna be more efficient. These systems we build will be more efficient and save us money and build our economy in the future and be a lot healthier for us.
I just wish again that I could say ditto. We're gonna be such a great team. You know, again, education, technical schools, but also, you know, remembering and respecting our past, but moving on to our future, and making sure that we are, you know, even currently now that we're educating and making sure that nobody feels left behind or forgotten, making sure that we are job training and that we're moving towards more sustainable, renewable energy. I think, you know, electric cars are awesome, but they're also super expensive. I can't afford one. I would love to have one. I have a Jeep Wrangler and my gas is super expensive. You know, raising the minimum wage, making sure that anybody who wants to help out, you know, that they can and have the opportunity to do so.
So other industries that people working in fossil fuels would move to as fossil fuel declines is manufacturing and natural gas and these other similar sort of monopolized industries. And energy, by the way, is just simply an industry that is difficult to not be monopolized. So that being said, looking at the cost, like the pay comparison, when they do lose their jobs and have to go to another job, like a lot of these people do not have college education. Even with workforce training, the jobs that they're looking for or assigned to or given and helped out with later is, again, it's a very significant pay cut, and it hurts these people, and it also causes a great resentment to as well. That being said, I think it's coming from like a UX perspective. I think it's important to understand straight from the miners and people in fossil fuels where they would like to go and how that would happen.
Okay, next question. While the energy industry, including the nuclear sector, is profit-driven, why would we expect nuclear energy providers to be uniquely exploitative in comparison to renewable energy providers, especially considering the heightened regulatory oversight for nuclear energy that is driven by often misguided fears about nuclear energy? Would you like that again?
Just a bit confusing, just
That's
maybe
okay.
the first time.
While the energy industry, including the nuclear sector, is profit-driven, why would we expect nuclear energy providers to be uniquely exploitative in comparison to renewable energy providers?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, because I do so they're kind of, are they asking, how do we expect people in renewable energy to not be as corrupt as people in fossil fuels and all the other energy as well? Is that kind of what
I believe so.
yeah, that's a good question.
Why would nuclear energy providers be more exploitative in comparison to renewable energy providers?
I am not sure if they would actually be more exploitative, if it's concerning like the CEOs and the ones that run the businesses as they're profit driven. I tend to have distrust for people who run monopolized industries, and so I don't actually know if there would be a major difference on the corruption between the two, but natural gas is cleaner. So.
I'm just gonna have a short and sweet answer that would just be listening to the experts, having them explain it. Transparency is key. This is a subject that I'm learning about, and I'm not afraid to say that. So just listening and having more conversations to learn.
I would not expect nuclear to necessarily be more exploitative than any other profit-driven industry. I think that's the beauty, though, of government being able to step in, is that when an industry, a corporation, a business's job is to make money. That's what they're going to do. They're going to try to make profits. That shouldn't be the government's job. The government's job should be to make sure that we all have the opportunity and the ability to live a happy, healthy, prosperous life, given the same rights and opportunities as everybody around us. And so that's where government regulation does step in. Yes, nuclear could be exploitative. Yes, any of these industries could be exploitative. If they're here to make money, that potential is there. But government has the power to mediate that threat if they wield it. So far, I've seen the West Virginia legislature roll back that authority step by step by step and allow corporations to ruthlessly, pursue profits at the expense of the people of West Virginia. So I think that that's true for any industry we would welcome into our state.
Going back to the question of big companies coming in and essentially destroying poverty communities, what would you do to limit those companies from coming in and using those communities only to leave and hurt the communities even further?
I think, again, one of the big things in terms of stopping the bleeding, we incentivize that in West Virginia. We make it easy for big companies to come in to impoverished areas, take advantage of people, take advantage of resources, take advantage of our land, and then leave when they're done. We give them tax breaks and we welcome them with open arms to do so. And we do that because we promise people jobs, and they do get jobs for a while. They're not necessarily good paying jobs, they're not necessarily jobs where you can grow and build a career or get great health benefits, but you do get jobs, and then these industries leave. So I think stopping incentivizing that practice is number one, and instead expecting that when industries are gonna come to West Virginia, we're gonna hold you to standards. We wanna make sure that you are investing in and living in our communities so that that wealth and those profits stay in West Virginia so we can, increase our wages and build up our communities.
One more time with the question. Sorry.
That's okay. Going back to the question of big companies coming in and essentially destroying poverty communities, what would you do to limit those companies from coming in and using those communities only to leave and hurt the communities even further?
Well, I would say, again, listening to the experts and being an advocate, and making sure that all communities are treated the same. No community is less than any other community. We're all here together. We're all here living together as one community. We do not have, enough fair housing prices for people to live in. So just being an advocate and somebody that would stand up for everybody.
So we can't deny that these big businesses that do come, they do create huge GDP for our state, including the communities that they live in. But we do have a lot of legislation that passes, and it does incentivize the rich. It does incentivize the out-of-state, and it's quite confusing because we have legislation that actually encourages these big businesses come in and take over West Virginia. And then we also have legislation that prevents, again, our own people from handling our own economy and creating our own sources of energy here, which is completely ironic in my opinion, and that's again why I want to push an open and free market, because I would love to see if West Virginians can find ways to get into energy and really expand the market, especially utilities in West Virginia, super monopolized. We only have 5 that we can pick from.
Our next question. The current legislature has weakened air and water quality standards. Do you agree with this? If not, what would you do differently?
I do not agree with how they've weakened the standards. Although I do support less regulation, I feel that we rely heavily on lobbyists, people that often don't live in West Virginia at all and never have. And these, I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
The question is, the current legislature has weakened air and water quality standards. Do you agree with this? If not, what would you do differently?
Oh, what I would do differently is, I really think greater representation, really hearing community stories and voices is super essential. So again, directly going to the people and hearing individual stories and collaborating on that data, because anecdotal data still matters too, especially in a place like ours, and understanding how we can use that anecdotal experience and projection of what the community needs to encourage that within legislation.
No, I don't agree with that. But it's gonna take putting a large group of people in office that have the same vision going forward. Holding people accountable and educating people in our state. We need to make sure that our communities are safe, that they're represented, and that they're heard.
Absolutely, I do not agree, of course, with lowering air or water quality standards at all. What I would want to do is raise those standards again, is listen to what, the EPA and what scientists tell us are safe, and raise those standards. In reality, again, even being in the legislature, I understand that I will be in a minority. So I think outside of raising those standards, enforcing those rules and holding industries accountable, I think we need to communicate what these issues are. I think we need to do a better job of explaining to people where all the money is in politics that makes people make decisions that are not in your best interest. There's a lot of money ensuring that those standards keep getting lowered. And we need to make sure that people are really clear on that. And taking that money out of politics would be another great way to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future. If you weren't getting money from the industries that pollute the water, you wouldn't be so quick to lower water quality standards because you're drinking it too.
Thank you. Recently, Huntington has restated city ordinance to prohibit living on the Ohio River bank, forcing unhoused people into Huntington's central business district. How do you view West Virginia as a place for people who refuse to conform to a traditional way of life and seek a life without permanent housing? And how will we make our natural areas more accessible to these folks?
Thank you. This is a question I feel very passionately about because most of my work these days is with people who are experiencing homelessness. I will say, I will challenge a little bit, the vast majority of people who are experiencing homelessness do not desire to live that way. I'm not saying there aren't some. Of course, there are always exceptions to a rule. The vast majority would like to be housed, would like to have a more stable, permanent solution. Right now, affordable housing, lack of services for mental health, substance use disorder, these are all things that stand in the way of that. You cannot just make it illegal to be homeless to fix homelessness. The way that we fix it is that we house people and we put in place all the structures that allow people to be housed. And certainly, I don't think that anybody benefits. Society doesn't benefit, the city doesn't benefit, and certainly the people who do choose to live on the riverbank, they don't benefit by being made illegal for being there, or anywhere downtown for that matter. If you see somebody on the sidewalk and that concerns you, a good thing to do would be to ask them if they need help, not call the police.
So there are people that are unsheltered that have housing vouchers that we cannot find housing for. So just let that sink in for a minute. So they have a way to have a home, they just don't have a home that's affordable for them. That blows my mind. So more affordable housing, more advocates who will advocate for people who are unhoused, unsheltered, and people just having more compassion for our neighbors because they are our neighbors. This is an entire community.
I'm also very passionate about the homeless. I'm actually involved with the city mission. I would love to get involved with the Harmony House as well. I do not like when legislation is passed that pushes homeless to other areas in the community, especially in areas where now they have to be in the open, because what happens is they get tickets and they can't afford these tickets, and after so many tickets you are put in jail. And so we've created a system where it's like, oh well, I'm sorry, we can't help you, but we're gonna throw you in jail, and that's discouraging. So I'm gonna go back to this free market idea. I actually have a plan that I'd really love to market if anybody wants to help. It's a litter pickup program. It's a B2B business where I would employ only homeless people, starting with just 5 people. It'd pay $20 a day or a bag. It would help to employ these homeless people, and I'd really love if they could get a tax exempt because that's too much. But anyways, we can talk more about that later. But that would help the environment too.
How can you prevent polluting mega corporations who have a crushing hold on the markets and thus can't have competition that can lead to more sustainable practices?
Great question. How can we create opportunities and legislation to allow our people in these monopolized industries? That would be my first question, because with all the regulations in the world, these corrupt people, big money hungry people are still going to be corrupt. But more regulation actually affects the poor and working class the most.
I feel like I'm just on repeat, and it's just gonna be electing people who care about people, and not businesses, and not making money, and just caring about our communities. Just really that simple, just electing people who care about the people.
Absolutely, I think that helps. And I will say that, and I think that you're not, this is my first time running for office, and as somebody running for office, I don't think you're supposed to say this, but taxes would help a lot. Making these big corporations pay their taxes would go a long way. There are so many ways that when you are rich and powerful, you can avoid paying just your fair share, which I would argue isn't even enough right now in this country. But you should be paying your fair share as well, and that would prevent people from being able to monopolize these industries if they were held to those standards, if they were regulated, and if they were taxed. And that doesn't harm the middle class. It doesn't harm people living in poverty. In fact, it helps. It helps us all when everybody's paying their fair share of taxes. We have more government, or we have more programs that we all benefit from. We have, Medicaid and Medicare and public education and everything that we benefit from with taxes. So that would go a long way.
While all of the speakers spoke favorably about increasing the adoption of renewable energy in our state, what particular legislative measures would the candidates endorse to drive that increased adoption?
I think one big factor that we've all sort of alluded to, but we really have to address, is how affordable these energies are for people to take up right now. As Allie already said, it is still pretty expensive to buy an electric car. That is moving, it is shifting, but like all things, it's shifting slowly, and you're fighting an industry that doesn't want you to be able to afford an electric car. They want you to keep buying gas-powered cars. So I think ways to incentivize and make it more affordable to access that technology. Same thing with solar. In the long run, solar does save you on your energy bill a lot of money. I can personally attest to that. But in the short run, it costs money to get those panels on your house. And so there are a lot of ways that we can legislatively incentivize and make it more affordable for people to use these technologies and see those benefits.
Yep. I would love to have solar panels, can't afford them. I would love to have an electric car, can't afford it. So, making incentives. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. I don't really know how to add to that other than absolutely. We need to make things more affordable for everyone. When working at branches, I house some of my clients into Markham Terrace. Do you think anybody in Markham Terrace could afford solar energy? No. I don't even think that the terrace itself could put in solar energy. So it's just making it affordable for everybody and having make sure that it is accessible to everyone in all of our communities.
May I have the question again?
Yes. What particular legislative measures would the candidates endorse to drive the increased adoption of renewable energy?
I would make it known more that we are, again, one of the top leading marketed natural gas producers in the world. Why are we only using 3% when we have access to all of this? So understanding maybe what legislation do we have right now that is protecting these fossil fuels. I do also support incentives. However, some incentives often do not, they still don't allow us to afford these solar energy. There actually is incentives right now. If you do have solar panels, you do get tax breaks. If you pay over $70 a month and you have these panels, that's great. I've talked to a lot of people about them, and we can't afford solar panels even with incentives. And so really just taking advantage of what we're already producing. Why aren't we doing that? So that's what I would kind of put through legislation.
Our final question. Would you support the idea of hiring certified teachers or workers to teach about renewable energy like water, solar, and wind, and how to do those jobs in the same way that vocational schools teach welding, HVAC, and electricians?
I think that would be amazing. Yeah, I think education is always maybe the first thing we should look into when we go into any kind of aspect of understanding something. And I think having classes and people to teach this sort of classes are going to help to encourage these creative aspects of ourselves, because we got to think about energy in the future aspect too. There are things in energy that are not even yet created because the person that's going to be creating them hasn't had that idea. And I think those ideas are really rooted in how we are educated by our teachers. I could also go into the teacher, the lack of teachers we have and all that, which I think should be discussed eventually. But so yes.
I also would say absolutely. It would just depend on what they are paid. Our West Virginia educators are not paid like the professionals that they are. And that's teachers at any level. So I think absolutely having certified educators to teach for sure, but it's paying them adequately as the professionals that they are.
Absolutely, I would echo that. I think it's really important to put your money where your mouth is. And we talk a lot about creating jobs for the future and educating our children for those jobs of the future and making sure that they're prepared. There are alternatives to college for everybody. Well, let's do that. I think that would be a wonderful opportunity to prepare students for those jobs. And again, to build up those industries in our state and show that West Virginia, we can be anything. We can be leaders in anything we choose. We have the drive, we have the motivation, we have the work ethic. Our history shows that. We also know how to support each other as laborers, as unions, as a community. And I think preparing our children for those kinds of jobs, that's exactly the sort of thing that is forward thinking and that we should be investing in to create not just one generation of new jobs, but the next generation, and what that industry looks like in 50 years.
That concludes our question part of tonight. I would like to thank all the members of the audience who contributed their questions. Thank you, they really added to our discussion. And now we'll move into closing statements by the candidates. Sydney, would you like to start off?
Sure, thank you all so much. Thank you all the organizations who put this together. I really enjoyed doing this. This is the first sort of panel like this I've gotten to do that wasn't just a meet and greet. So this was really fun to think about these questions and think about these issues that are important that I don't always hear when I'm knocking on doors. I just want to say a lot of the things we've talked about, I don't want to restrict us to what the government allows us to do right now or what the outcomes from policies have been in the past. The beautiful thing, and I am a Democrat, I do believe that government can do big, good things. They're not always necessary. We don't need them in our bedrooms and we don't need them in our uteruses, but sometimes we do need the government to do big, good things for us. And that takes vision, and it takes being willing to see outside the bounds of what has happened so far. What have we learned from the past, and what have the regulations and restrictions on, well, if we do this, though, this will suffer, or these people won't let us do this. No, let's not accept that. We can do that. We can break open those molds, and we can move forward if we have a government that's willing to have that big vision and say, this is the energy of the future. This is how we protect our communities. This is how we educate our children. This is how we provide clean air and clean water, and this is how we pay our bills and feed our families with these new energy sources, and West Virginia is at the forefront of that. And I love that vision for our state. Anything we do all the way. That's West Virginia, so let's make it something positive like this.
This is the first, like Cindy said, of anything that I think both of us have done like this. I feel like I'm in college again, honestly, watching videos and trying to read as much as possible. And I love that I can use my name and say that basically I'm a person of the people, and I'll try to put things in layman's terms. I truly believe that representation does matter. I have a great passion for our community. I'm a creative community leader. I'm learning to be a politician. I have active listening skills. When I don't know, I ask questions. I ask Cindy questions all the time. And I think it's having the willingness to learn and represent our community, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to listen to our community, what our community needs, and then reflect that in the legislature. I think a lot of people have gotten away from that, and they're doing what the party says and not what the people say. So I think it is having a passion for wanting to be a leader and to stand up and to represent what you truly believe in your heart and not what other people tell you to.
So, the three main pollutants to air is particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and ground level ozone. West Virginia is a national energy hub. We have the energy here to make it clean and produce and give our miners the job they need at the pay they desire to continue supporting our growth on both the individual, family, and entire community level. It would be really awesome, I think, if again, I know people sometimes are a bit nervous about my perception of regulations and how I believe it actually harms us in a lot of ways. Some regulation is absolutely necessary, especially when it's concerning big business, the rich and CEOs, outsiders and lobbyists, etc. But it would be really cool, again, if we could somehow clean our air and water through mechanical sources, something that we can create, provide jobs, and actually clean it, not take what we have and be like, oh, let's restrict it and we'll keep the dirty and go on. Like, it's not going to clean itself. I mean, it does somewhat in photosynthesis, right? In Germany, they're actually creating something called filter tubes. It's Man and Hummel. It's these tubes these blocks that they're putting up in busy street corners, and it's recycling the air and making clean air in their societies. It's the most successful and the only thing in the world that I can find that is looking to clean air at a mechanical source. And West Virginia has a lot of young minds that are super creative, and I think we can create the technology here if we have the proper acceptance, respect, education, and promotion resources to these people. Oh, I can keep going. Okay, this is also my first race. It is a lot like being back in college. That being said, anybody can do this job. I'm fully grassroots. I'm a family-funded campaign endorsed by West Virginia Can't Wait, and if anybody wants to help, just reach me.
I would like to thank all of you for coming and to remind you that we have refreshments at the back of the room if you'd like to mingle and have something. And I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking our candidates for being with us this evening.